What's up everybody, welcome to HeroWatch, the series where each episode I break down a different Overwatch 2 hero candidate and evaluate how likely they are to join the playable roster in Overwatch's sequel. Today's candidate is the former racer turned MEKA squad pilot and possible Talon agent, Casino. This is Master Ian Gamer, and real quick before we get into it, I'd like to mention that if you end up enjoying this video, consider subscribing and flashing that bell icon, as both do a ton to help out my channel and keep you up to date on all future Overwatch news and content. But now, on to Casino. To start, let's run through all the canon information we have about him. Jae-Eun Kwan, better known by his call sign Casino, is one of the 5 pilots alongside D.Va, Demon, King, and Overlord who make up MEKA Squad. His first appearance was in D.Va's Shooting Star animated short, where he is shown to have taken part in the recent battle against the Kishin Omnics. After sustaining non-life-threatening injuries, he went on leave with the others while D.Va stayed behind to work on her mech. On the Busan map in Overwatch, we can also see the outside of Casino's room in one of the MEKA base spawns, as well as his mech parked in the hangar near the control point. Beyond just what we see in the map and animated short, some additional tidbits about Casino were revealed by Overwatch's now former lead writer Michael Chu via past interviews and Twitter. The first is that the full name of his mech is La Princesse Serene, and also, unlike his fellow mech pilots, Casino was a Formula 1 race car driver prior to joining MEKA. Furthermore, despite the full roster of MEKA Squad members first being officially revealed in August of 2018, Chu actually teased one of them being an F1 racer all the way back in December of 2017 during an interview on Wired.
And so D.Va is sort of considered to be the best gamers in Korea to be a member of the squad. And so she's in this squad with these other pilots who, have similar skills like her. There's some other gamers, and then you've got like pilots or like a F1 driver.
Of course, this teased character ended up being Casino. Now, shifting a bit more into the mysterious side of things, perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Casino is his apparent ties to the country of Monaco, which are evident from his call sign, mech's name, and history as a Formula 1 driver. His mech's name, La Princesse Serene, seemingly stems from the term Serene Highness, which is a title used in reference to the reigning royalty of Monaco. Additionally, Monaco is famous for its many popular casinos, and also just so happens to be the location of the Monaco Grand Prix, which is one of the most prestigious Formula 1 races in the world. These references in and of themselves are interesting simply due to how subtle they are, but become much more intriguing when you factor in the role Monaco has played thus far within the Overwatch story. As I'm sure many of you recall, Maximilian, who holds a powerful position within Talon, runs a casino in Monte Carlo, Monaco, and treats the country as his primary base of operations. It's where he met with Doomfist in the Masquerade comic, and Monte Carlo itself is confirmed to be one of the upcoming maps in Overwatch 2. In fact, when examining the officially released images, we can see that it even appears to be a payload map featuring an F1 race car as the payload, and racing will be a strong theme present in the map's various locations and detailing. With all this in mind, it seems almost inevitable that Casino, the former F1 racer, will be further referenced in the map itself once it releases. But for now, what can we make of these rather strange ties he seems to have? Perhaps the biggest question which sticks out is how a South Korean dude came to be so heavily associated with Monaco. Even if he grew up always wanting to be a race car driver, there are other F1 races beyond the Monaco Grand Prix. What led him to adopt a Monaco-inspired call sign and name his mech after Monaco royalty? As much as I hate to say it, I really can't come up with a good answer for this. Realistically, there's any number of reasons why someone might make these choices. For example, while his name and appearance indicate that he's Korean, maybe Jae-Eun was actually born in Monaco and or grew up there. Then, later in life, he moved back to South Korea to join MEKA Squad, and chose his name based on where he'd previously spent most of his life. This is just one of many possibilities, but unfortunately, we just don't have enough information to definitively explain this connection yet. I'm willing to bet that once the Monte Carlo map releases with Overwatch 2, it'll likely hold much more clues to this mystery, but in the meantime, all we can do is speculate. One other major thing to consider when it comes to Monaco and Monte Carlo is that, so far, it's been overwhelmingly associated with Talon. As I mentioned, it's Maximilian's base of operations, and in the Overwatch 2 trailer, we see Talon PvE enemies deploying on the Monte Carlo map. So we have to ask whether Casino is tied not only to Monaco, but Talon as well. Given how little we know about his personality beyond the fact that he's apparently quite flashy, it's once again difficult to say whether or not he has a history with the evil organization. The idea of Talon having a foot in MEKA is certainly an interesting one, since so far both D.Va and MEKA Squad have very few connections to anyone or anything in the main Overwatch storyline, and there are plenty of seats on the Talon Inner Council that could be filled. In fact, you could potentially even argue that this person here is Casino. They both have similarly sharp facial features and slick hairstyles, but the main difference is that this man's hair isn't as white as Casino's, and he looks much older. Then again, Masquerade released more than a year before Shooting Star, so for all we know, Blizzard might have made some slight tweaks to his visual appearance between the two. Heck, look at how Moira was depicted in the comic versus what she actually ended up looking like in-game only a few months later. The stylization of the comic makes her appear almost as if they could be two separate people. It's entirely possible that this man was intended to be Casino or some other early version of the character. Personally, I don't think it's him, but the idea of Casino being tied to Talon still seems plausible, and could be a fascinating way to tie MEKA as a whole into the main storyline. But beyond his faction ties, there's a lot we can extrapolate about his character and possible in-game abilities based on these details I've covered thus far. First and foremost is that, like D.Va, his kit would probably be based around his mech and whatever unique capabilities it possesses. Perhaps the single thing which sticks out most about La Princesse Serene is the incredibly sleek aerodynamic design of its main body. This design makes sense considering the race or origins of its pilot, so it's safe to say that Casino would be a high mobility hero with some kind of flight mechanics. Beyond its high speed design though, not much stands out about Casino's mech when it comes to combat capabilities. It appears to have two energy guns of some kind, one at the end of each mech arm in the same way as D.Va, but otherwise lacks any sort of apparent weaponry or tools. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that it's actually the least visually outstanding of all the MEKA Squad mechs, and is the only one that lacks any apparent unique abilities. Another big thing to consider with Casino's mech is its size. As seen in the Busan MEKA base hangar, it's actually quite large. It's roughly the same height as D.Va, but much longer and wider. When factoring in the top fins, it's even taller than Sigma, who's currently the tallest hero on the game's playable roster. This means that, if added as a hero with the mech we see here, Casino would be by far the physically largest hero in every aspect. But even this isn't an accurate portrayal of just how big he'd be. In the hangar, his mech is actually seen crouching. We only see its legs fully extended in this shot here from Shooting Star, which means that, as a playable hero, his mech would stand even taller than this while walking around. This sheer size alone basically forces him to be in the tank category. But even if his size somehow wasn't problematic when it came to simply navigating doorways on basically every map in the game, Casino would also generate a redundancy problem among the existing tank heroes. Not only do we already have a decent number of high mobility tank heroes, but two of them are already fellow mech pilots, with one of them even being a fellow member of MEKA Squad. Casino would need to have some remarkably unique abilities compared to D.Va, as otherwise I find it hard for Blizzard to justify having two massive high-speed flying semi-humanoid shaped Korean mech tank heroes with incredibly similar story backgrounds in the same game. And this is perhaps the greatest factor against Casino being a viable new hero candidate. Aside from his mech being incompatible with most if not all existing Overwatch maps due simply to its large size, the unignorable similarities it has to other mech-based high-mobility tank heroes makes it hard to think of a niche for him to fill that wouldn't end up feeling redundant. So, with the mech he has now, I'd say it's almost guaranteed that he won't ever be a hero. However, out of all the MEKA Squad characters, Casino's the one I could see potentially existing without his mech. Based on what we know about his character, ties to Monaco, and possibly Talon, Casino himself seems incredibly fascinating, but is held back exclusively by the design of his mech. So if he ever had a chance of joining the Overwatch 2 hero roster, it would require him to ditch La Princess Serene. While at the moment there is zero story evidence to suggest that this will happen, it would free him up to become basically any type of hero. Perhaps if he is involved with Talon, that will end up being the more prominent aspect of his character, with MEKA being more of a backstory element, similar to how Wrecking Ball is currently an independent adventurer, but has backstory ties to both Junkertown and the Horizon Lunar Colony. You could even argue that this is actually supported by how comparatively generic and uninteresting his Mecha Squad mech looks, especially in contrast to how cool and flashy Casino himself appears to be. But as I said, we just don't have enough information at this point yet to say if this will happen one way or the other. We're basically treading on fanfic territory at this point, so I might as well stop here. Overall, Casino as a character has a surprising number of possible story connections, which would make him a prime new hero candidate if he wasn't being held back by the oversized, redundant design of his in-game mech. If story-wise he could somehow ditch his vehicle and find some other way to function as a hero, then he'd definitely be a candidate to consider. But with so far no evidence of that happening, I have to give him a 2 out of 5 on the scale of probability, which makes him an unlikely candidate to be a future hero. I don't doubt that he'll play more into the story going forward, but for the time being, I can't recommend getting your hopes up for him joining the Overwatch 2 hero roster. But let me know your thoughts on Casino and his chances of becoming a future playable hero by dropping a comment down below. Do you think he'd make for an interesting addition to the roster? And what sort of role and abilities do you think he could have? Subscribe, flash that bell, follow me on Twitter at MasterENGamer, and check out my Discord server to never miss any future episodes of HeroWatch alongside other Overwatch news and content. If you'd like to help support my channel, then hit that join button down below to become a channel member and unlock cool rewards like the people you see here on screen. Otherwise, this is MasterENGamer signing off, and until next time, stay safe out there everyone, and have a great day.